So I just got finished packing a bunch of tomato sauce for the day. It took me all day to do it. I got 21 jars. I did 23 jars a couple of days ago. It's the right time of season. It's, what is it? It's the middle of September in Southern Ontario here. And this is a great way to spend a day. Does it save you money? Probably not. By the time you buy the tomatoes and buy the jars and pay the electricity and all the stuff involved in doing the canning process, probably costs you actually more money. Is it any healthier? I don't know, maybe a little bit. There's no preservatives in these, but does it taste fantastic? Absolutely. Was it a good day's work? For sure. I got something out of it. Every time we open one of these jars, it makes me feel good about what I did today. There are a lot of benefits to doing canning, and so I'm going to take you through some canning today. This is probably not a video for people who've done a lot of canning, although I do have a little secret that I found on another YouTube channel, but it's a trick and I'll show you that. But this is more for people who have never done any canning. And I'm no expert. I've only been doing it for a few years now, but I know what I'm doing, I guess. I've never killed anybody. Everything we've eaten has been fine and very tasty. I'll show you the recipe and all the steps involved in canning tomatoes. Okay, I'm just going to give you a chance to bail out right at the beginning by showing you what kind of a mess you can kind of expect to make while you're canning tomatoes. And there's another little bit of a mess over here. Hello, chickens. So the whole process starts with a bushel or two, in our case, of Roma tomatoes. And we picked those. Actually, we didn't pick those. We bought them, but you can pick your own, and it's a little bit cheaper. These were 18 bucks. I'm in Southern Ontario, so that's what the reference is as far as money goes. 18 bucks for a bushel, or 14 bucks if you pick your own. And then the next thing you do is you give them a good wash in a tub of some sort. From there, you transfer them into a washing sink. I mean, the preliminary wash is out in the tub, but this one is a little bit more specific. You're washing each one individually, and from there you're going to transfer them into a very hot bath of water. Okay, it starts with this machine right here, and that's the machine that gets rid of the seeds and skins of the tomatoes. Like, it's not that expensive. You know, you're going to make a little bit of an investment if you're going to do this the long term, but it's going to last forever. We've had it for several years now, and it works great. Here are some other things you need. You need some like bowls to catch the sauce in and to catch the guts and stuff, and a couple of pots, and I've got a little secret to show you how to get water out. So you need 2 pots for this little secret, and I'm actually using a third pot today just to show you how much water I'm going to get out of these tomatoes. And okay, first thing you're going to do is you're going to wash each of these. Just give them a quick little wash. So I'm just like super hot water, as hot as your sink will get, but you don't have to boil the water. But this is just to soften up the tomatoes to make it easier for the machine to get the stuff out of it. Okay, so I've got all the tomatoes washed up and they're into the hot area, but unfortunately the hot area kind of cools down as you throw the cold tomatoes in there, so it's barely lukewarm. So what I do is I just empty the water real quickly and then crank it up one more time. Okay, the next part of the process is just very quickly cutting the tomatoes in half. Romas are nice and like bullet shaped, so if you cut them once in half, they fit nicely into the machine. If you're using like a beef steak or some other big round tomato, you might have to cut them in quarters to get them down the chute of the machine. Okay, I got a bunch cut up, and we're gonna start this machine, and this is where the magic happens. Guts that you're looking for come into this part. Skins and seeds go into that part. This is it. Fire one in, squish it down, and eventually it starts to come out. So you do that for about the next 4 hours, and eventually you fill up a couple of huge pots. The one thing that you need to do every once in a while is just clean this off, because it does kind of get plugged. I'm not sure how much that makes a difference. I've never noticed that the stuff stops coming out, but it does get quite a big layer of gunk on it. So I just clean it out once in a while, and that's that. So I'll see you in 4 hours when I get all the tomatoes done. I did forget to mention, I took this off to show you what's going on, but there is a little cover that goes on there and stops the stuff from spraying all over the place. So we're going along good here, and I've got my first load of seeds and peels. have a look at how full that is. I'm going to put it through one more time, and then I'll show you what comes out the other end, because there'll be quite a bit less seeds and peels after I put it through the second time. All right, so it's worth it. So I don't know if I can do it before or after. I'll see what I can do. But if you can remember how full that was, and now that's what we get out of it the second time around. I could put it through a third time and probably still get a little bit more out, but I'm not going to bother doing that. Okay, so we've done our first sink load. I would say maybe half or even just a third of a bushel, and that's how much we have so far. But I just have a couple of quick notes for you. I experimented with just not cleaning this thing off. You can see how gunked up it, and it got a lot worse than this actually, but you can see there's still a lot of pulp there. And so what was happening was it was preventing the pulp from getting through the screen, and then what came out was a lot wetter, and I had to put it through a couple of extra times to get it to be completely dry. And so it is worth cleaning this off. It's kind of a pain, just because it's kind of awkward to get at all the parts of it, but it is worth cleaning it off and keeping the screen nice and clear. So I've done the first sink load, about half, maybe a little less than half the bushel. I've got quite a bit of sauce already, but it's very runny. Lots of water in there. I haven't done anything to get water out of it yet. I want to show you this trick, and this is like the main reason I'm putting this video together, because most people just boil the crap out of their tomatoes. But if you go on YouTube, you'll find all kinds of other ways of doing it, and to me, a lot of them are like very much labor intensive. This one, and again, I'll try and remember who the guy was and put a link to his, or put something on that indicates who he was, because I'm not going to take credit for this trick, but it's a great little trick. And this is all it is. Grab yourself a fairly like tight sieve and just get in there and pull it out and just hold it over a pot, and you can watch. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see the water just falling through that sieve. And if I show you that, like, it runs pretty clear. I don't know, can you see that? I mean, it's almost clear water. This will drain for quite a while. Like, you could probably get it almost down to tomato paste consistency if you drained it enough. But you don't want tomato paste, you want tomato sauce. So you're going to leave some of the liquid in there, and then you just transfer it over to another pot. And so this will be like the main pot of what I'm going to can eventually. And then I've got this one over here, and like I said earlier, I'm just going to collect all the water that I get out of these tomatoes, just to see how much water there is compared to how much sauce there is in the end. You can see like how thick, I mean, look at how thick that is. All right, and look at how much water and how clear that water is. That's about how thick the sauce itself is going to be. Whereas if you didn't get the water out, I mean, that's what it looks like before you remove the water. I don't want to boil this stuff too much, so I'm just keeping this on low, just so it's heating through as I do this, and then just before I can it, I'll crank it up and get it to a good boil. But you don't want to boil this stuff too much, because you're boiling out nutrients, you're boiling out flavor. So this stuff doesn't get boiled much. It just gets, you know, brought to a boil so that the process of removing the water works correctly. Okay, we're getting down to the last bits of tomatoes. So the next thing you got to do is you got to get your jars ready. The first thing you do is you put them through the dishwasher and get them nice and clean, and then you just put them in the oven. So one of the main things you're doing when you heat the jars in the oven is to make sure that the temperature of the jars kind of matches the temperature of the sauce. If there's too much of a temperature gradient between the sauce and the jars, then the jars will crack. The sauce is boiling, so that means it's 100 degrees Celsius or 212 Fahrenheit. So I'm going to put it at 250, and that means that the jars are a little bit more than boiling point. And that's going to help to, what's the word I'm looking for, to get rid of the bacteria?
Oh, sanitize.
Sanitize? But that's not the right word.
No. Disinfect?
Disinfect. That's not even right.
Huh.
They're not infected. No. They have bacteria.
Yeah,
they're nice. They got to be nice and clean, right? You can't have bacteria in the jars when you jar them, when you seal them, because then, you know, things go bad. Okay. So you got to kill all the bacteria. And if you want to look up the word we're trying to think of, go ahead. It means don't have any bacteria in it. All right? So that's what we're doing now. And then we'll talk about canning when it's time. Okay. All right. This is the final product. So we've got a massive pot of spaghetti. I'm not sure how many liters that is, but my guess is we're going to get 23 1-liter jars out of that amount of sauce. But over here, we have all the water that I took out. And you can see, I mean, if it's light enough, you can see that this is running super clear. And I'm going right to the bottom. I mean, obviously some of it's settled to the bottom, but I'm going right to the bottom to grab that. And it is almost pure water. And my guess is, I mean, these pots are slightly different diameters. This one being the bigger of the two. And the level is close to the same. So my guess is this pot actually might have a little bit more in it, the water pot. So we've taken out potentially more than 50% of the volume in water. And that's a pretty good start because, I mean, if you take a look at this sauce, it is a nice, thick consistency. So you're not going to have to boil the crap out of that when you go to make your sauce out of it, because you don't have any water to boil out of it. As a matter of fact, I would argue it could be a little bit more runny. So the last thing before we can it is we have to add lemon juice and some salt. And I'll tell you about how much we have to add when I figure it out. I added the lemon juice and the salt, and the ratio is 1 teaspoon of salt per quart, 2 tablespoons of lemon juice per quart. The salt is optional as far as I was reading, but lemon juice is really important because tomatoes aren't acidic enough to create an acidic enough environment in the jar to keep bacteria from growing. So you need an acidic environment. So that's what the lemon juice is for. So that's really important. You can add more lemon juice, but you shouldn't add less than the 2 tablespoons per quart. And for us Canadians, 23 liters is 24 quarts. So it's almost 1-to-1, almost. So all the stuff in red here came in a canning kit. So you got you have a magnet to pick up your lids out of the hot water. This water does not need to be boiling, by the way. It needs to be just hot enough to make the rubber pliable on the rings. All right? Obviously, the rubber is what causes or creates the seal. They don't have to be brand new every time. Some people buy new ones every year. I don't buy new ones every year. I just inspect the old ones, and if they look all right, I use them. All right, but some of them you got to throw away. You obviously need a ladle. You need a couple of different things to pick jars up, and just a place to do your work. Set your jar up there. This jar is going to be good and hot, so you got to be careful. But the whole point of the hot jar is so that it's the same temperature or thereabouts as the sauce itself. And then just be super. I've got an extra large ladle, which is a bit of a drag because it's hard to pour it perfectly. A smaller ladle might be better. Okay, that's going to be good. All right, so you've got about 1/4 to 1/2 inch head space there from the rim down to the sauce, and then you just grab, you see this all right? You just grab one of your lids, put the lid on, and then I've got the rings in the dishwasher. Grab a ring. Some people say that you need to get rid of some bubbles. I don't know if you can see those bubbles well enough, but there's a few little bubbles along the side. I don't bother doing that, and it's never killed me. And just hand tight, there you go. Go on to the next one. Just be careful because it's hot. Just waiting for that sound, that popping sound. It's going to happen any second now. That popping sound is going to happen any second now. We're just waiting for that popping sound. It's going to start any time now. Any second now, one of these lids is going to pop. At some point soon, one of these lids is going to pop. Soon, one of these lids has to pop. If it doesn't, we could be in some trouble. Ah, did you hear it? Did you hear it? There it was. Okay, now they're going to start popping like crazy. That was the first one. So the popping sound is the lid actually caving in, kind of, because the hot liquid is starting to cool down, and so therefore it's contracting, and kind of creating a vacuum inside the jar. And the lids are made to be a little bit convex, and when they get sucked down with the vacuum, they pop down, and that tells you that the lid is sealed, and then no oxygen can get in, and if no oxygen can get in, then no bacteria can grow, and then that's how canning lasts. These things will last for a couple of years anyways, at least. So that's the whole process of canning. There you go. That popping sound is the last little step in canning a jar of tomatoes.